Ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Hi, everyone.
Hey, everybody.
And we're back with another bookmark. It's been a while, haven't it?
Yeah, it's been 2 weeks. We do these every 2 weeks now.
Right, yeah. So the year 2021, we're going every other week. And
right.
It's, it like we've said before, these do take some time to produce. So, we want to keep doing this because we like reaching out and talking to everybody, and people like us doing this format.
Right.
Yeah,
it really does help people kind of put a face to our video essays and
Sure.
the work we do. And I do a lot of audio on the Facebook Book of Hours page. But just to start things off, JP is nursing an injury. He sustained a pretty bad rib injury on Monday.
Yeah.
And as luck would have it, there's no work this week, so he's able to stay home and
recover. Yeah.
From his injury.
I just to let you know, I hit an icy train tracks coming down a hill
On his bicycle.
on my bike,
Right.
and it just.
We don't have a car, so he rides his bike everywhere.
Right.
He uses his bike the way a lot of people use their cars. We have saddle, bags, and we have bags that we put on the sides of the bike for groceries. And, until his job goes away permanently, which will happen in a couple of months, there still is a little bit of work. So we take the work where we can get it, and he was on his way in, and that's when he sustained the injury, only to be told that there was no work this week.
Right.
So.
Yeah. So anyway, nursing that injury, rib injuries. I mean, and it's just a bruise. It's not anything worse than that. But again, I ride through there all the time, and it wasn't, wet tracks. It was icy tracks, and I was going too fast, and I just hit it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm not as animated as I might be usually, but we're kind of just freewheeling it this time, just freestyling it. Talking about whatever's going on. You had some things. You were talking about something this morning, but I don't know if you want to get into that or if you want to start about something else.
Well, what's really interesting is I was thinking about polemics. Okay.
Yeah.
So I seem to recall, and I'm not a history buff, but I seem to recall that Benjamin Franklin and somebody else got into a war of words, so to speak, and it was written publicly in the paper, and it was a source of entertainment for the people. So they would read these, sort of back and forth attacks. So Benjamin Franklin would write this attack on this other person, and then he would turn around and write an attack on Benjamin Franklin.
That did take place between Thomas Jefferson, and I think it might have been Aaron Burr.
Oh, okay. I thought Franklin was part of it too, or am I getting my founding fathers?
Or it was Jefferson and Hamilton, I believe.
Okay, so it's what's called polemics, and it's where you go after somebody else who's equal to you, like another writer, another publisher.
You see a lot in academia.
And it's part of the framework of how we were founded. These are the founding fathers that would engage in polemics and this sort of style of attack writing, and it was fun, and it was entertainment for the masses, and it was part of what. And then over time, it seemed like that kind of transitioned into like slapstick comedy,
I guess.
In theater or in early 1920s, 1930s, sort of gag comedy on stage. So this kind of like Three Stooges, kind of comes out of that, where you're kind of like doing these attacks on other people who are like your equal, but it's entertaining. Nobody takes it seriously. Nobody took it seriously when the founding fathers did it, when they were attacking each other in this publication that was entertainment for the masses. But now, in the 21st century, and especially in the United States, Polemics is not, it's kind of been phased out. It's not really something that we engage in anymore.
And you see it now and then, but yeah, you mostly see it in academia and specific circles, very tight-knit circles.
Right. So I think what's really interesting is that an actual podcaster, we're not podcasters. We make video essays, we make art, we make artwork, and we build a commentary around the artwork. But a podcaster does engage in polemics. He will zoom in on other podcasters and kind of tear them apart. And I always looked at it from an academic perspective, and I think you did too.
I guess, yeah.
I mean, it's not something that we engage in because we're artists. That's not where our talent lies. But he's very good at it. It's very entertaining. It's very funny. He's
Sometimes,
very good at it. And he's known for that. And to me, it's like an old art form. It's an old political rivalry art form or argument that is kind of part of our history.
There's a literary tradition in that. Yeah.
Right. So.
I'm not one for it. I actually don't like them. I don't like writing them. I don't like reading them.
Right.
I sometimes enjoy this particular podcaster and the way he approaches his polemical information. And there's such thing as polemical debate, right? This is what Julie was talking about. So there is a tradition around it.
Right, there is. And I mean, even the Founding Fathers would go to these really low places. Mm-hmm. Like, they would really hit below the belt in their attacks on each other. And it was really entertaining for the masses, for the people. And it was taken purely in that context, purely for entertainment value.
Well, I think that the guys in the argument were pretty serious about it. I mean, there was some serious political rivalry between Jefferson and Hamilton, and subsequently, I mean, there was a duel fought over those particular, points of view. So,
but still, it was entertaining. Okay, these kind of like below the belt attacks. I just feel like when it's in writing, it's not to be taken as serious as.
I mean, like you were saying, slapstick comedy and stuff. I mean, there's even the comedic roast, right? Mm-hmm. Where
you roast, when Donald Trump got roasted and when Obama got roasted, they do these roasts, right? Yeah. So this has been kind of a long-standing tradition. It's called Polemics. Okay, so this podcaster really does go to those places, and he's keeping that tradition alive. How's that? That's a very diplomatic way of saying that he's keeping these old traditions alive. One thing that is unfortunate about where we're headed with this attack on free speech and attack on the First Amendment, especially in the age of COVID, and especially as the tech influence has kind of taken over our political realm, is that there's no room for polemics anymore. There's no room for this kind of old school standard, I mean, what was the producers? Was it no, not the producers. The movie where it's about something that's about something, and it just the story just gets worse and worse and worse. It's all fake.
You're talking about the aristocrats?
Yes, the aristocrats.
Oh, well, that wasn't really a polemic though. That was about a joke.
That was a joke, but polemics are also there's jokes in there. I don't think that okay, so when Thomas Jefferson was attacking, what was it, Hamilton? Mm-hmm. When Thomas Jefferson was telling Hamilton, your mother was a whore on the ship and blah, blah, blah. That's not true at all. Everybody knows it's not true. And so the next time he would write him, he would say and she had, sex with pigs or whatever.
Right.
And then she did this, and then she ate the pig, and then, it's, you know what I mean? It's it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and everybody knows it's fake because it's entertaining. Okay, so do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm getting it.
So that's where That's the aristocrats kind of like went there.
Yeah.
And anyway, so this podcaster, he engages in polemics a lot, whether he realizes that he's doing it or not. He's a modern day polemicist. Okay,
sure.
He goes for the throat, and he hits below the belt at times. There's nothing wrong with that. That's part of our nation's history. That's part of our dialogue, especially in media. Okay.
Yeah,
and in entertainment. Okay, so he is in the middle of a strange like lawsuit that he shouldn't even be in right now.
Right.
You can explain like what that's about. It's so
real
weird.
Quickly. So this podcaster also has a blog and has been writing a blog for a while, and he did some research. He came across this one individual, and I can't think of who he is and what he's about, but he was associated with government, and he wrote basically a hit piece on him, a polemical piece on him, and later the media person Alex Jones also did a piece on this individual. And used this podcaster's blog piece as a source, like he was citing it as a source of this is proof that what I'm saying is true. The court or the individual who felt like he was being slandered sued Alex Jones, but then also suing it. But also is going after this particular podcaster, and the only reason is because Alex Jones, a well-known name with money, cited this blogger as a source, and so the lawyers for this individual also said, well, then we're going to go after this dude too. Right. So that's what's going on. So
it just feels like what this is an attack on. I don't think it's really an attack on the piece itself. Like, I don't think it's an attack on free speech. I actually think it's an attack on the person, and that they're going to be using him as an example that you can't engage in this kind of like old school polemic dialogue where you go to those places which we all know to be of entertainment value.
Sure.
In fact, there's a show on Netflix that was really good, and we thought for sure that they would pick up a second season. Mm-hmm. Ironically, it's filmed here in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. I'm not okay with this.
I think it was called I'm Not Okay with This. Yeah. And I was like, why wouldn't they bring something like that back? Let's pretend that COVID doesn't exist. What's the real reason why they don't?
They gave COVID-19 as the reason.
But that's not the reason.
So they canceled the show. They had originally Netflix had resubscribed or wanted a second season basically, and then this past August they said no because of COVID. So what Julie's saying is, what is the real reason?
The real reason.
And I was saying, I think what it is basically, it's about subversive teens who are not putting up with bullshit and who aren't following the party line.
Nope.
At all in any way, shape, or form. They're oddballs, and they are not giving in to the quote unquote tyranny around them. Because they have a sense of themselves, and even if they didn't have as much, they don't seem to have as defined a sense of themselves. They were just more like angsty teenagers, but still at the same time they were defiant, and this was about their defiance. And I have a feeling that that's what's going on. That is the reason that they canceled the show.
Right. So it's this defiance to go against the common practice or the common good. And it's the same thing with this blogger / podcaster. He's very defiant of, things in general, like we all are in a way, but they're using his an example because, and it just so happened that it's kind of like guilt by association.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really no reason to pull him into this dumbass lawsuit at all. And there was really no reason to cancel the show. The show was phenomenal. If you have Netflix and you want to go see it, it's called I'm Not Okay With This.
Yeah.
And it's one season only.
Yeah.
So what we are seeing here is, in general, is a very whitewashing, I don't know, even, or beige washing of speech and polemics and blogging and YouTube channels.
Well, I think there's a
being
couple
just kind of
Yeah, I
pushed
think
out.
there's a couple things going on here. We've noticed a massive increase of corporate culture invading social culture and culture in general throughout the world, but here in the United States because that's where we live, but throughout the world. And corporate culture is invading everything, and the way that you have to talk and the way that you behave is all part of how you're judged and how you're treated and what happens to you. And so we're all becoming these corporate reports. In other words, we're all employees of the corporation, and when we act up or do our own thing, then we're punished for that as bad employees.
Right.
The other thing that I think is going on is that, and this has only so much to do with what we're talking about, but we've said this over and over again, fascists have no sense of humor.
Mm-mm.
People who are fascists, people who are fascistic in their way, just they don't have any sense of humor. And the corporate world is the same way. You can't have like a real sense of humor in the corporate workplace.
No, at all.
At all.
No.
I mean, the kind of humor that, or the thing that passes as humor in the corporate world is very bland and very obvious and stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're a smart person and you crack a joke that's like maybe a little sardonic or off the beaten track or just a little off in any way, I mean, you can really be punished for that kind of behavior. You're punished for the way you act, and it's really pretty fucking awful.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's awful. So this is where we are. We're not headed there anymore. We've been warning people about this for years, and I'm sure many people have been warning others about corporate culture taking over society in general. But a lot of people, especially well-read and people who really do their research really well, they talk about it in terms of like, corporate finance has taken over your government, and there's a delineation between like the way you live your life, and then of course the way the government is run, and the government is run through corporate influence or corporate capture, corporate interests. But what's happening in the age of COVID is we're seeing this corporate capture and this corporate behavior infiltrating our personal lives. And this is where a lot of people are kind of getting it wrong. They're calling it either communism or something else, but it's really corporate capture of your personal life.
Right, exactly. And we did a piece, we did a video, a very popular video called Communitarianism, and communitarianism embodies the idea of the corporate attitude and corporate culture.
Right.
And the common good is always what floats down the middle in corporate culture as well.
Right.
So
we're seeing more and more examples of this common good behavior, and it's really getting fierce, and it's really scary. We have a really good friend in Michigan who operates outside of this common good behavior. He pretty much, explains to us daily what a disappointment the human race is, and we agree with him, except for our audience.
Right.
Our audience is understanding what's going on. He found himself in a situation where he was giving CPR to someone, and they didn't make it. And his, there's a mixture of feelings, with that, to look at death so closely.
Yeah, and most of us don't deal with it like that up close.
Right. So he had to literally look death in the eye and in the face of this poor soul who had already left his body. And everybody just went along their life.
Right. So this was a traffic incident where a man was most likely a heart attack or maybe a stroke.
Like a stroke or something.
Was driving, and he ended up veering off and
lost control of the car.
Yeah, and he ended up hitting a light pole. And
our friend witnessed the car going against traffic and going the wrong way, and immediately his intuition kicked in, and he said something isn't right. So he drove over to the car and found the car had stalled in front of a post, and the guy was, I guess, passed out,
slumped over the wheel.
And so our friend jumped out of his car and banged on the window and said, "Dude, wake up." And the guy didn't wake up. And then only one person came out. It was a girl who works at like a store and kind of witnessed this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
She came out to try to help, and they were able to,
they had to break a window to get into the car. A
small window to reach around and pull unlock the door, open the door, and the guy fell out, and that's when our friend started administering CPR.
Mm-hmm.
The whole experience, though, was very traumatic for him. He's very sensitive, like a lot of us are in the age of COVID, and our sensitivity is really bubbling up now. And he was just really disappointed in the human race.
That nobody stopped.
Nobody
People
stopped.
kept driving by and driving
nobody
by.
Nobody cared.
Yeah.
Nobody even tried to help.
Whereas, I find that sometimes things will happen that are like really, like we heard of a fender bender take place outside of our house.
Yeah.
Because we live close to a fairly busy street, and we heard this thing happen. We went out and we looked, and two cars had collided at very slow speed, but it was fast enough and hard enough of an impact that both cars' bags had deployed, airbags had deployed, and but everybody was fine. The only thing that was damaged were the cars, really.
Right. And all the neighbors came out on their porch.
Right, and there were all these cars, stopping, and people were. So it feels like like when there's something minor, but it looks bad.
Right.
People will stop, but when there's something that's really bad but doesn't look bad, people just let it go and keep going. And so I'm not sure what to say too much about that. But in general, we've been finding that there's been a lot less caring about people and
in real ways
and more shaming campaigns and like we've talked about this before with the whole idea of be kind. And when it's really not kind, it's not kindness at all. It's niceness. It's just surface level. Again, it comes back to the whole idea of corporate behavior.
Right.
Of just surface level, just be polite and be
fake.
Open and fake. And there's a lot of fakeness there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so this whole kindness campaign it goes along with that. Whereas the real true kindness was in the act of this friend of ours who was trying to help out a fellow human, and that's true compassion, is true kindness, right? And in Buddhism they talk about loving kindness, right? And it's part of compassion. And what we're dealing with out there is nothing like that. It's very there's a word for it. It's not coming to me, but it's very surface level and clinical. It doesn't really have anything to do with anything except being polite and nice and appearances. It's all about showing how how you act rather than how you act. And this is, I guess, why people use the term virtual signaling a lot. I don't like that term myself. I think it's a dumb term. Virtue signaling. But I mean, signaling is it's a valid term. I mean, I heard some folks talking the other day, and they were talking about signaling their political viewpoint, like other people were signaling their political viewpoint through, certain acts, but they weren't using the virtue signaling term, right?
Right.
Which I don't know. I just don't like it. I've never liked it. But I guess I don't like it because it is such a thumbnail, like, Swiss Army knife kind of term. Like, you can use it in so many different ways, and it gets to be a go-to, and it becomes a cliche, and I don't really like that.
Yeah. Same thing with Hegelian dialogue.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's another story. That's a whole other bookmark just on that one topic.
I know, right?
But anyway, so and so the opposite of what we're just talking about with our friend in Michigan is, I saw somebody who I actually worked with in the corporate world, who I always thought was really rather rational and kind of smart, and turns out it's not the case at all. In fact, I think the age of COVID has made smart, rational people insane and stupid and ridiculous and mean and
awful.
And so here's the other thing. There's the other side of corporate culture, right? Whereas, like, on the face, you wear your mask. It's truly, you wear a virtual mask. Your placid niceness, but behind that is like, they'll stab you in the back. They will, people will hurt you, and they will hurt your career.
I know what I wanted to say.
Okay, but let me mention, get this one point out. Is that this person exhibited that very behavior. So now, okay, so I said fascists don't like humor. Julie did a piece the other day on the blog. That's book-of-hours.com/blog. And it was about the idea of double masking, and she was satirizing this whole notion that now we need to start wearing not one but two masks. And seriously, this woman didn't go after Julie for that, but she supports the idea of double masking and thinks it's a great idea. And I said to Julie, okay, how soon before she dies? Because I want these people to start dying quicker than they are.
Yeah.
Because they're doing things. They're doing things that are hurting, that are harmful to our health, and that will give us a faster death. And I just want it to be faster for them, because I'm tired of them telling me that I should harm myself.
Yeah, it's gotten absolutely, like, out of control. It's bad enough that they're only 10% of the population, and that they hold all of the power in the media, and they hold all of the money. They're the she's in tech. She makes all the money, and it's just please go ahead, wear two masks. Wear two masks while you are
in your
driving.
home. Yeah, wear two masks while you're driving. Wear two masks while you're in your house and working from home.
Do it when you're on your bicycle, when you're taking a hike in the mountains.
Yeah, do that. Yeah.
But especially when you're driving. Yeah. In fact, cover your eyes when you're driving too.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah. Quickly.
In fact, here's an idea. This is even better than two masks. What I would like is all these people who are advocating for double masking, or just masking in general, especially if they yell at other people to put on masks. What I would like you to do is hold your breath indefinitely, because that way you cannot breathe in anything that's out there, right? You won't get sick.
Right.
If you hold your breath, you literally, and close your eyes too, because it can enter your eyes apparently.
And your ears.
And your ears. So plug your ears, close your eyes, or put a blindfold over your eyes, and hold your breath.
Yeah.
We'll wait.
Yeah, then that'll protect you from the virus or from the disease.
And then we won't have to deal with you anymore. Okay? Because you'll be in the corner holding your breath.
Do it! Do it for the good of the community.
It is. It is for the good of the community if you stand over there in the corner and hold your breath. Okay? And we'll wait for you to do that.
In fact, why don't you stand in a sealed off room.
That's a good idea. Or, even better, if you have access to a garage that closes and it's a small space.
Turn your car on.
And then turn your car on. Because that would be...
Crack your windows a little.
Yeah,
no, don't
crack your window a bit, And then see, but that's for the good of the community.
It's for the good of the community.
Yeah,
it really is.
So those of you who are insisting that the rest of us wear double masks or a mask at all, you can either go hold your breath.
Go ahead.
or go do that thing with the car, because I think that those are both very effective means of preventing
fighting COVID.
Yeah, fighting COVID for sure. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention about the podcaster who's found himself, unfortunately, wrapped up in this dumbass lawsuit where this dumbass person is going after Alex Jones, is I was like, okay, so when I first heard about it, I was like, okay, well, given the circumstances, the fact that he's just a blogger, he's not that popular,
right.
And the dude who's suing Alex Jones is just using this one blog piece, as a way to bring the podcaster in or the blogger in. I was like, okay, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. Like nothing bad's gonna happen. The judge is just gonna be like, psh, whatever. He's just a blogger, and Alex Jones just used his blog.
Well, not only was it
just
an opinion piece, but it was also backed up.
Yeah, he may be very opinionated and does engage in polemics, which again is an age-old style. We're kind of founded on that. But he's also a very good researcher.
Right.
He's a very good researcher. So this whole time I've been like, he'll be fine. Well, apparently his attorney has disappeared and just poof, gone. And that's when I went, oh shit.
Yeah.
Because I've been there. So when your attorney disappears,
and
that's not a good sign.
And so now that I think about it, you mentioned about the attorney and everything and about your situation. We started seeing this happening to bloggers and to people writing polemics or opinion pieces that are criticizing either a company or a person or a person's actions. And those people who they're writing about are either connected politically or corporately. These people get sanctioned. These writers, they get sanctioned heavily. So they either get attacked, or they get taken to court. And at the very least, at the worst of it, the very least of it, they their content gets removed from whatever platform. But it's pretty insidious how this is becoming a normal practice, and it started back maybe, I don't know, 5 6 years ago that we started noticing it. It probably has been going on for the last 10 years and making a gradual surge to where we are now, to where people are on the regular being attacked for what they're saying.
Right. Yeah. So here we are on the real left. The actual left, where we could give a shit less about politics and your electoral process, which is just rife with corruption and fraud and completely overtaken by corporate policy and corporate interests. You have no say in your life. It is all run by these public-private partnerships, which is fascism.
Right.
So when you have public-private partnerships and the people don't benefit, that's fascism. Anyway, so here we are on the real left. And we're like, when you talk about Gab and Parler, and of course UK Column did this story.
Today's UK Column,
about this woman who had been part of this, what was this
She
company called?
She was, I don't remember the name of the company, but she was a like a publicist for publishing, for publishers and writers,
for literature,
literary agency or
so,
publishers, whatever. It was in the literary world, either publicists or
So they have 3 offices, one in Chicago, New York, and LA. And she announced on Twitter recently that
back in November,
right, in November, in solidarity to the fact that Twitter is taking people down right and left and censoring people, in solidarity to the First Amendment. She said, hey, you can also find me on Gab and Parler, where they actually uphold the First Amendment and they don't censor people. She has enough of a Twitter following on her own that she didn't really need to do that. But it was as a publicist, like someone in the literary world, you want, that's your thing. Your thing is the First Amendment. Your thing is free speech. And so she did that, and her company her agency fired her because they make the wrong assumption that Gab in Parlor is harboring like terrorists or something.
Well, they
or
you know, it's
whatever.
it's that it's violence. Okay,
Yeah,
so we're
right,
seeing this.
that it's violent.
So we're seeing this language get amped up, right? So it went from, you are, saying bad things about people. Now, when you talk on Gab or you're on Parlor or you say something about somebody else, you are committing violence. And so,
just by being on the platform.
Well, just by
Right.
being on the platform or saying things, like Julia's been saying for years, she's been, making fun of people. It's like, well, words hurt.
Yeah, words hurt.
It's very, very, very hard.
Boo, words.
Boo boo. Because words hurt. And I'm sure you all have been experiencing this too. I mean, I've been getting so-called friends contacting me and asking me what has happened with you.
Oh dear.
Oh my
Words
God,
hurt.
what has happened to you? You're so much different than you used to be. Actually, I haven't changed that much. It's the world that has changed. And the sensitivity around what people say and how they say it has changed. In fact, if anything, I've become more sensitive to how I say things about people or what I say in public. And what's changed is the other people's sensitivities surrounding language and what, because I've had, Julie and I, we've had people come after us really hard and like really rude, just like at the best of times, rude things. Like I was at a party once.
Oh, yeah.
After the 2016 election, and I voted Green, so I voted for Jill Stein. And this is when I was a statist and when I
And he also
believed
voted
in
for
right.
Cynthia McKinney.
Yeah, at one point I
Like,
voted for Cynthia McKinney.
He's been
Anyway,
this way for most
right,
of his life.
Right. So anyway, so I'm
Except not now
I'm at this
anymore.
party and this dude comes up who I know, and I was pretty vocal on Facebook about what I stood for and what party I was in and all that. And he's like, "Don't you feel bad that you didn't vote for Hillary? Don't you feel bad for not doing that? Now we have Trump." And I was
Full
just
false
like,
equivalence.
I was like,
Right.
I was,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
and the thing is like he's never had any financial
this
issues.
person, yeah.
He's, very well off, lives in one of the most beautiful
Well, he's privileged.
Victorians in the neighborhood.
Yeah, it's a nice little Victorian house.
Oh
and-
my God! His husband is like an author and incredible. Like,
Right, and he
they're
works for
so
the nonprofit.
privileged.
He works for the nonprofit industrial complex. So I mean, he's fine.
He does
He's
nothing
part of
to
the
help.
He's part of the managerial class.
Yeah, he's totally fine, and he's like attacking us
right.
for not believing the way he believes.
Right, exactly, and so and that was, I just felt that was, I was incredulous at the moment. And,
I wanted to punch
and I
his lights
basically
out.
was
I had
like,
to walk away.
I basically said, well, why should I vote for you? I'm not even part of your party. Why should I vote for your candidate?
I've never been a part of your party.
Right.
That's just
It's
it.
like, why didn't you vote for my party?
Yeah, why didn't you come over to my side?
Right. So if you're so
pompous piece of shit.
right, exactly.
Like,
if you're
what the
so
fuck?
progressive, why didn't you come?
Yeah.
So that aside, okay. What I'm trying to say is this kind of rude behavior and meanness and callousness and way of going about things in a very underhanded manner. Very narcissistic and sort of sociopathic way is the way things have been going for a while, and it's only starting to get worse, and it's going to get weirder and worse.
Yeah,
as
because
things go
everything's
along.
becoming San Francisco-ized.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Your whole life is going to
Yeah.
be like living in San Francisco. Good
Yeah.
luck.
There's lots of stories we can tell about San Francisco.
Oh, yeah. And you can see the correlation between the way San Francisco runs,
Right.
like politically and also socially,
Well-
and the way that it's going for the
Yeah,
world
yeah.
now.
I always I lived there for over 33 years, okay, and I felt straight, like the whole time. I was there for most of my life. I lived in San Francisco. And I always felt like there was something wrong.
Yeah, there's
and I never
something
could
wrong.
put my finger on it, right? It wasn't until I moved away and like things started getting weirder, everywhere, that I realized what was going on. But I did have an inkling, before that happened, because I read something. I'm not going to bring it up, like what the person said, but it was in a blog piece, and they were talking about San Francisco and describing it. I was like, oh, yeah, that's totally correct. That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah.
But my point was that you said that everything's becoming San Francisco. You have to kind of like live there and understand it, or to be there to like and then move away to understand it. Because when you're in the middle of it, you don't quite understand it,
get
and especially the people who.
But we were getting it.
We were getting
That's why we spent a year looking for a place to move.
Something. Liz,
Julie. It's okay. Come on.
Julie.
Sorry. Sorry.
Julie told me a story about she used to live in Chicago and San Francisco. She'd moved back.
Oh yeah, I did the back and forth thing a lot.
A few times. It was sort of like like a shorter version of On the Road.
Yeah.
But anyway, Julie was in Chicago and she met
Kerouac.
She met somebody at a show, I think, in a bar, and you were talking to her.
Double door, yeah.
And they found out that each other, they lived in San Francisco at some point, and this girl was like, oh man, I've lived in Chicago my entire life, but I moved to San Francisco for a short time. That was the hardest time that I've ever had living anywhere. Was living in San Francisco. She's like, my bike got stolen, I got beat up, and I got robbed, and all this shit happened to her. And she's like, that's a hard place to live. And here she lives in Chicago, where I've always thought of it being like a much harder environment to live in than San Francisco ever did. Actually, I only got broken into a few times in one apartment.
Yeah, I never. Well, I never got robbed like from a stranger. I had a boyfriend's brother, who was a heroin addict that stole like all my jewelry to pay for his addiction, even though he's a trust fund kid.
Right.
And I was, working for just above minimum wage as a temp or something. And
well, that's
it's
that's
like
just
you're taking money from me.
Right.
Like, what's wrong with you?
Well, that's just it. It's like, the kind of place.
Yeah, exactly.
That it's very corporate in a way that the things happen to you. You can't prove anything, or you can't do anything about it because it's so underhanded and hidden.
It's like this, I'm going to take your pen and paper. It's okay, right?
Yeah, it's okay.
It's okay, right?
It's all right.
It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay that I just bashed your car in, okay?
It's okay. Oh,
right.
Stop it. Stop getting angry that I just, ruined your life.
Right, exactly.
What's wrong with you? In fact, I'm going to call the police on you because you're mad that I just stole something from you.
Right, exactly.
So that's
the kind
what
of
you're
attitude.
Dealing with, and that's what our...
you think that's an exaggeration? That's
this
what
is going to be your life.
Yeah.
This is what the podcaster / blogger is going through. You can tell he's in shock. Like, he's like, why am I even a part of this? I don't have anything to do with this. I'm completely innocent. I'm not even involved. And suddenly I'm finding myself embroiled in this really real thing.
In this lawsuit over an opinion. And
my lawyer has just disappeared. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, welcome to San Francisco.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
even though he doesn't live there, but that's
totally fucked.
The whole world is becoming.
He's probably not fucked, so to speak, but I mean,
we'll see. But
he's in shock.
Yeah, he's in shock, and I don't.
We're not surprised.
And and I don't blame him for that. That's fucked up.
Things are going to get really, really weird for your life, and very in your life in very personal, weird ways. You're going to be either accused of things that you have nothing to do with, or something bad will happen to you, but it will get turned around and make you look like the bad guy. Obviously, the most obvious aspect of being San Franciscoized is the community shaming and the community pressure to do things that harm yourself or to go outside of your own interests. Or to be somebody that you're not. JP, I know that you are the person that you are your entire life, but how dare you be that person? You should be the person I want you to be.
Right.
Kind of like that.
Yeah.
And as far as friends or family members or whatever that have asked him, what happened to you? It's like, well, he decided not to be your personal doormat anymore.
Right.
I'm sorry, that's inconvenienced you.
Yeah, I know, it's hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and it's hard when you point out other people's flaws when they,
Yeah.
Well, something else too. Like, okay, so we're on a San Francisco roll. Somebody else on Facebook proudly stated that they got immunized, or they got the vaccination. He's like, vaccinated. I got vaccinated. And so then 2 days later, this report comes out in a British newspaper about how...
No, I think it was the Times.
Something. I don't know what it was, but it was a quote-unquote reputable mainstream publication, and it said that people who are being vaccinated are now
still
becoming carriers and super spreaders, and that, and basically using the same language against them as it's been used against us, who aren't masking, right? And so I posted that, and I tagged him, and he's like, how dare you tag me? You know, it's like, okay, so
I got his viewing turn.
Exactly. It's like, okay, well, you're the one who posted that you got a vaccine, you know, and you're the one that's been saying shit about people who aren't, you know, wearing masks or protesting or all this other shit. Now you're basically, you know, I'm telling you what you've been telling all of us all these months, and now you're unhappy about that.
Oh my
it's
goodness.
Like if it was saying, you know, non-maskers are super spreaders, you'd be all right with that. But now it's like, oh, I went and did the right thing, and now I'm being blamed. Well, welcome to the corporate world. Welcome to San Francisco.
Right.
You did the right thing, and you're getting blamed for it.
Right. So one of the first things I did when I went live on the Facebook page, and you know, when the lockdowns first happened in March and the closure of businesses and all this stuff, you know, the governors were saying, I need you to close your business, blah, blah, blah. First thing I said was, it doesn't matter what you do. You could twist yourself into a pretzel to follow the rules, to follow the guidelines, to follow the mandates, to please everybody around you. You can wear 47 masks. You can get a vaccine every 2 months. You can shut your business down whenever they say go. You can follow the rules to the letter. It will never matter. It will not matter. They will always fuck you. In fact, the more you follow the rules, the more that they think that they can take from you and fuck you over.
Right.
You have to stop following the rules if you
Right.
want to go back to normal.
Right.
If you want any kind of
Yeah.
semblance of what you had before the lockdown.
And the memory loss and is staggering, you know, and that's what happens, I think, when with trauma, but also with brainwashing, where
For
you know
sure.
everybody was like, you know, flatten the curve, flatten the curve, flatten the curve, and it's like, okay, 10, 11, 12 months later, you know, we were supposed to flatten the curve in 2 weeks, so what happened? Right?
Yeah, the
Well,
curve-
now there's even more deaths than ever.
Yeah, it's a variant, and you have
it's
to wear
like,
2 masks.
And it's like,
now.
okay, so on one hand they'll use the stories and the statistics about, you know, like, well, you know, because people were masking, that's why we were able to do, you know, whatever, flatten the curve. But because those people weren't wearing masks, that's why there's so many deaths out there, and you killed grandma and all that crap.
It doesn't matter.
And it doesn't matter
Like-
what you do, because see, the thing is the people that are telling you to do these things are the very ones that are getting away with, you know, with murder. I mean, you know,
Literally.
Okay, so I just found a blog piece today. So the Secretary of Health here in Pennsylvania, Dr. Rachel Levine, she was promoted to be the Assistant
Health Secretary
Health
for the
Secretary of the
United
States, right?
Everybody knows. Yeah.
Named by Biden. Okay.
Right.
Everybody knows that.
Everybody knows. Yeah.
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
true.
It's true.
Everybody's freaking out about it.
And this individual did a blog piece about her. This is on a leftist
Very
publishing
leftist.
company. Okay, one that I buy books from now and then, and they have some bloggers. And this person basically, you know, they handle LGBT rights, you know, and you know, fine, whatever. We support trans rights. Okay, so this individual, Dr. Rachel Levine, is a trans woman. Okay, and there's a lot of people that are going after her for that. We don't. We go after her. Okay, so there's like this opposite thing. Like we're straight down the middle. It's like we go after her for the reasons you should go after her. Okay, the right is going after her because, you know, because of her transgender persona or whatever.
Because of her transition.
Yeah, and the left are supporting her because of that.
Right.
Okay,
And everyone's getting it wrong.
But they're not going after her for the real reasons that
Her
she's
policies.
problematic. It's her policies.
And her hypocrisy.
And her total hypocrisy. She is responsible for a lot of elderly people dying needlessly in nursing homes and care facilities. And I won't go into all the reasons behind that, but basically she's a hypocrite because she pulled her own mother out of one of those care facilities and then locked them down.
Keeping them away from their families.
And as well as, and I will go into it, there were a couple situations where people who were sick from other facilities were put into these elder care facilities, and then they locked them down, and it's like, oh, well, no shit. No wonder
it's
a bunch of
murder.
old people died because you had outside vectors coming in that weren't there before, and then you suddenly lock down the facility. Where's that shit gonna go? It doesn't go anywhere. It kills people.
Okay, I'm gonna make something very clear to Biden supporters and to those who use identity politics as a way to assert yourself in this country. Dr. Rachel Levine is a murderer. I don't give a shit that she used to be a man and transitioned into a woman. I don't care about that. She is a murderer. She should be held responsible for murders of innocent people, innocent elderly people that were purposefully put in harm's way.
Well, and
she's a murderer.
At the very least, for the corruption of knowing what might be coming and taking her own mother out of a facility like that, only
that
to
gives it
condemn,
away right there.
Only condemn other people to that fate. She didn't want her own mother to.
She knew what was going on.
Of course.
She knew what she was doing.
Right.
She's a murderer, and she should be. There should be a tribunal for these people that purposefully did that. I mean, there needs to be a court set up.
And we're not going to see that.
No, we're not. You're not going to see that.
We're seeing a worldwide genocide against the human race.
Yeah.
And we're not going to see what we've seen in the past with other genocides that have taken place, like the Nuremberg trials or the trials against the Khmer Rouge, or what took place in Rwanda. Or in Europe in the war in Bosnia, right? And you're not
going to see that.
We're not going to see trials that are going to go after the people responsible, because the people who are responsible are the ones that are still in charge, and they're going to kill us. They're trying to anyway.
Yeah, that's why you have to suffocate your children by putting 2 masks on them. I want to talk a little bit about Ratched.
Oh right, yeah.
And the harm that comes with trying to always do the right thing.
Right. Okay. So just a quick introduction. Ratched is a character, Nurse Ratched from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, has been written into a new TV series on Netflix.
Right.
And the first season was released just a month ago or so, a couple months ago, and we just watched it. And this is sort of not a review, but we're talking about what's some of the things that we picked up on.
Sure. And I think that the general takeaway from the story is that it's a little more complicated and a little more nuanced than most messages that come through American TV shows.
Right.
I mean, it's got a few different layers.
Right, it does.
So you have people that want to do things to change the world. They have a gift. There's no doubt about that. There are certain characters in the show. They have a gift, and they're onto something, and they really want to use that gift to help the world. That is a noble cause. They all have noble causes.
Even when they're almost psychopathic.
Yeah, so they have these noble causes. Unfortunately, there are a series of circumstances and situations which those noble causes have possibly put them in harm's way, and they end up dying. They end up losing their life because they're so busy trying to save the world that they themselves are put in really bad situations, whether they're dead, murdered,
or lose their career,
or livelihood, or lose their freedom.
Right. Yeah. Now there's another character that's doing a noble thing for another individual, to save an individual who has been accused of doing very bad things, and the character does bad things to help this person. And as a result of trying to do the right thing, ultimately, the nuances there, you'd have to watch this. I'm not going to go into it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, spoiler alert or anything like that.
Yeah.
There's no need for that. The very thing she does to help this one individual causes problems and ruins the lives of like 2 or 3 other people besides her own.
Right.
And it really is kind of amazing, and it follows along that sort of like the path to hell
Right.
is paved with good
The road to
intentions.
hell
The road
is
to hell,
paved
yeah.
with good intentions.
And it's kind of remarkable to see all this, how it's illustrating what's, in a way, it's like illustrating in a microcosm of what's going on out in the world.
Right.
And
So I think that as we get, further and further along in this, and John Kerry even said, at the World Economic Forum, when they did their virtual Davos meeting, it was a virtual meeting, plenty of YouTube channels have captured this, so I'm sure you can find it out there. But he did say that this is going to come faster than people realize. So, in response to that, your response to that is not our response to it. Now, your response can be whatever you want it to be, but our response is to say to each other, okay, well, what can we do to protect ourselves, to live our best life, and to try to make decisions based on who we are as opposed to reacting to fascism. Make the decisions for your life that are based on your own dreams and what you want for your own life.
Right.
I still have a very good friend in San Francisco who, I guess you would say, she is a liberal. She is part of that circle. Yeah. It's unfortunate, but she was honest with me, and she's like, look, my dream is to have a little antique shop in the middle of the desert, and live out the rest of my life in quiet contemplation. And, she has all this really beautiful mid-century stuff that she's collected all over the world her whole life. She's quite the collector. So she has the means to do it.
Right.
She could. If she really put
and she has the ability to source these products as well. So
and
she can easily do it.
So whether you live in fascism or the age of COVID, that's a good answer, because that's something that she's always wanted. She's wanted that her whole life. So to me, that's a good answer, because it's not defined by fear. It's not a reaction to the situation.
Well, and I think the takeaway, and something that we've been saying for a while, and when we watched Ratched, it kind of hit home for us, is that it's time to stop trying to save those people who you think are or who are basically supporting the COVID narrative. Okay, you cannot save them at all.
Or change their mind.
Or change their mind in any way.
Wake them up.
Or wake them up. It's time to stop doing that. So stop focusing, and we've said this before, stop focusing on all the stories and all the data and all the, because they're not going to look for it anyway. Even though they demand it from you, they won't read it. They won't look at it. They will do like this guy that, I tagged in an article that he would have normally supported.
Right.
But because it was about him, he wanted to reject that idea.
So he said, don't tag me in this because,
Exactly.
I don't
so
want to see the
it
truth.
Doesn't
That's
matter.
who they are.
Stop trying to save these people. You're not going to be able to, or convince them, or anything. You're not going to educate them. You're not going to save them. You're not going to change their mind. It's time to start taking care of yourself. So what is it you want in life, and how can you get that in the age of COVID?
Yeah, and live your best life. So we had a conversation. It's like, okay, we live in this opportunity zone. There's no job. There's no access to real nature right outside our front door. It would be a difficult process where we'd have to mask up in order to get to nature. And even at that point, it's kind of a private park, right? So who knows what rules are going to be
in place. It's not a private yet. It's still part of the city park.
Right, but who knows what rules are going to be in place in the future,
right,
so that you can have access to trees and
because things are
hiking and all that.
Although, Julie, this morning we did have a skunk visit us.
I know, we had a big time skunks. I like to sleep with the window open no matter how cold it is. It's just, it's healthy, and boy, I could smell the skunks this morning.
Yeah, so at the end of January we have skunks. But anyway, I digress. So we do have some nature around us.
Yeah, we have nature, sure.
But not like you think.
So we had to ask ourselves, obviously we want to have our own place. We want to have access to beautiful land. We want to be able to cultivate the land and grow gardens. Maybe install a swimming pool, because I need to swim or be in the water. Something that we can do with as we please, without too much pushback. And it seems like lofty goals, but you have to think about what really defines you and what do you love. There are people who love to travel. I love to travel too. I have experienced the globe in one way or another. Not as much as some people have, but and but there are people that just it's like in their blood, and if they don't travel, then they shrivel up and die. And so I'm thinking to myself, how are those people going to continue to live the life that they should live, because it really does define them within this construct? Like, how do you do it? Like, do you just go ahead and get a vaccine and that way you can have access to the plane and throw on 47 masks and
for now, I mean,
hope for the best?
The thing is that it goes back to what Julie said earlier. It's like, it doesn't matter how much you do and how much you comply. What you love will be taken away from you eventually if you don't try to rethink how you live your life.
Yeah, so you'll have to make a lot of sacrifices and things that you are.
We're going through a period of immiseration, right? And it's going to continue and get worse. So we have to find ways to make ourselves happy despite what is going on outside.
Right. I also think that civilization is dying off.
It's being strangled to death.
If you're told and you actually believe that we have a population problem, then I'm not talking to you because you're an idiot. Civilization is actually dying off. There's an entire generation that did not populate the earth. The Generation X.
Pretty much.
Everybody I know in my age bracket doesn't have kids.
Very few people in our generation had kids.
Yeah, so there are, even though there's maybe overpopulation problems in concentrated areas, like maybe in the global south, as a whole, the planet is not overpopulated. So civilization is being killed off on purpose through
any number.
You name it.
Any number means
the modified food industry.
Well, you're experiencing them. Okay, so that's all we really have to say.
I mean, and you're killing yourself, and other people are killing you through the modified food industry or through the stratospheric aerosol injections.
Or through whatever substances we use and abuse, right?
Right. So. Substance abuse, it's a culling, and it's been a culling, and they've just accelerated the culling starting March 13th of 2020. They just accelerated it against the population. So what happens? I guess the point I'm trying to get to all this is that when a civilization is dying off, and when human beings are going through this like extraordinary crisis that they can't even wrap their puny little minds around, there's a lot of weird shit that goes down. There's weird behavior with animals. There's weird behavior with weather. Whether it's manufactured weather or not. There's weird behavior with how you relate to people that you thought who you were your compadres and thicker than blood are suddenly your enemy, and everything's upside down, and nothing makes sense, and you're accused of things that you never did, and you find yourself in court and you're like, what the hell just happened? So there's all this weird stuff that happens when a civilization is being culled and when it's being targeted to be killed off.
Right.
That's what's happening.
Yeah,
that's the goal.
And I would never suggest necessarily for somebody to read a Chris Hedges book, but his last book that he put out, the America, the Farewell Tour, might be something you want to look at, because it might give you an indication of what's to come, or what we're experiencing. Because he talks about how his experience in Bosnia, covering the Bosnian War, how he saw this breakdown of the society there, and he's seeing the similar patterns that have been taking place for the last few years here in the United States, and this stuff is happening worldwide. I mean, today is what is it, January 27th? Go to the UK column episode for Wednesday, January 27th, and they talk about what's going on in the Netherlands, which is a country where protest and misrule is not necessarily something that takes place on a regular basis. Not like France or Germany, but there were protests that were taking place where agents provocateurs. Well, I think the protests were legitimate, but then and peaceful. But until they called them the Romeos, these professionals that go in as agents provocateurs and slip in and get the situation riled up so that people start acting out, and it allows the police to come in with water cannons and truncheons and all that kind of thing. And that's actually what took place in two towns in the Netherlands, in small towns where it's like normally like really, really quiet. Like, you just don't have stuff like this. And so these kinds of things are taking place in places you would never expect that to happen. And what's going on in Europe, I believe, is also happening here, but in a slower way. And even in small town America, these things are starting to take place. You'll find in small towns that have nothing to do with really what's going on, but all of a sudden they've got task forces, right?
Coronavirus task forces.
Yeah, COVID task forces, and it's like they have practically zero cases, and the cases that are attributed probably weren't that in the first place, because we both know, Julie and I, and you do as well, as we continually say it's a marketing campaign, and we believe that with all our hearts.
The really interesting aspect of like what happened in the Netherlands with the water cannon was how close to home it hit. Because I remember being in Montreal, or was it Sweden? Was it Stockholm or Montreal?
Stockholm.
Where there was a footballers, sports people were acting crazy.
Yeah, and out on the street, we just kind of walked into it.
And we just happened to walk into it. We were leaving the tube. I guess we were coming out of the train station, and we were walking to a bicycle cafe.
Yeah.
And we were just walking there, and we just happened to be walking along where the big riot was taking place, and it was a sports thing. It didn't have anything to do with politics.
It wasn't really a riot. It was just people acting out.
People that were acting crazy, and one guy walked by and said, oh, it's just sports people. Don't worry about it. He must have seen the look on my face, like, oh my God, what is this? Okay, so
football hooligans.
That's what he said. He said, oh, they're just football hooligans. Don't worry about them. Okay, so the thing that happened in Norway?
No, in the Netherlands.
Oh, I'm sorry, the Netherlands. Sorry. Yeah. The thing that happened in the Netherlands with the water cannon is a story that really hit home personally, where a couple were riding their bikes along, and they were just riding their bikes to put their bikes back in the bike share, and they got attacked by a water cannon and were knocked over, and the poor woman was seriously injured, and they were not even a part of these so-called riots.
They just happened to be there.
They were like,
yeah,
it could have been us.
Right.
This is the part that really got me freaked out, because it could have been us.
Yeah.
We're not rioters. We don't participate in any of that nonsense, because most of it is just provocateurs. It's not real. The real left doesn't riot.
Right.
They argue. They'll sit and, drink coffee and smoke cigarettes and argue about, the fate of mankind, but they don't riot, they don't burn buildings down.
We make jokes about it, but, it's just like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but no. So that could have been us. This couple that were putting their bikes away, we're big bike riders. You know what I'm saying? Through the city parks and stuff. It's that totally could have been us. And that's the part that really,
hit home.
Freaked me out.
Right.
But not only
she was knocked unconscious.
She was knocked unconscious. She, her husband or her boyfriend was trying to help her. Right. Trying to bring her to safety. But then what happened? They escalated it. Somebody escalated it.
Well, no, there was a commentary in the newspaper afterwards.
Oh, right, because they complained or something, right?
They basically they were published in the newspaper as complaining about what was going on, and this poor writer had to stay in her house all day because of the riots, and she was basically taking on a Nazist sort of perspective of like, you know, you people are evil. Again, we're coming back to that language of like, you know, you're committing violence because you're going against the government. You are going against the government, so you deserve everything that happened to you. And if I were you, and this, you know, you're lucky that nurses will help you at the hospital.
They're bike riders. They're probably just tourists.
She was like going on about, you know, this guy was on UK Column. He was translating this Dutch commentary. This woman. And she was like, you know, if it were up to me, I would barely give you a Band-Aid to put on your bleeding head. You know, you deserve everything that you got. It doesn't matter that you weren't part of the protest. You were there.
You
and
exist.
So you're guilty. Yeah,
you breathe, therefore
yeah.
you are a carrier of a terrible disease.
Again,
how dare you exist?
Exactly.
That's really what that comes down to.
Yeah.
That language, that same language. So these two probably tourists who were simply riding bikes, they weren't a part of anything, just putting their bikes away, were told that it's their fault and that they deserve everything they get just for being in that general vicinity, just for wanting to return their bikes or return to their apartment or hotel room or Airbnb or whatever. They were just literally minding their own business, not doing anything. And this writer like attacked them and said, you deserved to be knocked unconscious by the water cannon. You deserved to be injured. You deserved to have your life put at risk. Just like you deserve to have your job taken away, to have your children go a little bit insane and will never ever, their behavior will never be corrected because of what's going on with the schools and the masking. And you deserve to be poor and you deserve to be attacked because you're breathing.
Right.
Period. Because you're breathing.
Well, and everything is...
And you could be carrying a deadly pathogen.
Exactly, and everything is being put into that context.
So you deserve...
Right.
Because you're a human being, and you dare to breathe... And I'm not even talking about you dare to not want to wear a mask, or you dare to question the efficacy of the so-called pathogen.
We've been talking about this, how this is going to transition from the pathogen and the virus talk to us being breathing out carbon. Basically, we're spewing carbon into the atmosphere.
It's your fault that the planet is dying.
We're killing the planet by existing, by breathing, and so we have to eliminate ourselves. So it's not just our lifestyle anymore. It's not that you're bad because you drive. You're bad because you flew. Even though Prince Charles can fly all around the world to tell people not to fly all the way around the world or to take plane trips. Okay, it's okay for him to do it, but not for us. It's not that anymore. It's not about Greta using a boat because she doesn't want to fly in an airplane. It's about you and your contribution to the death of the earth. You're killing the planet just by breathing.
Right.
So go stand in the corner and hold your breath.
Put on a bunch of masks.
Yeah.
Right.
And hold your breath. We'll wait.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what it's come down to, and and they're giving you every excuse out there to let you know that they don't want you around anymore.
Right.
And this is really sad. Okay, 2 more points, and then I want to wrap up. If you have any other things you can say. So this morning, Julie discovered a post about a private school, grade school, elementary school in Florida that took the entire contents of its library, all the books, and dumped them into a dumpster.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not attributed to COVID, but I imagine it was because books. When you touch things, you transfer the virus. Even though these books have probably been sitting around for 20 years, and you go and touch one that somebody touched 10 years ago, you might pick up something. And then the other thing that killed me, that really, and it was also with schools. So we're basically attacking the children, right, in a number of ways.
Mm-hmm. Children are fucked.
Children are fucked up. Yeah, they're definitely fucked.
Yep.
In Alaska, the kids have to kneel instead of sit in a
desk.
In a desk, right? So they can't sit on a desk anymore.
They have to sit on the floor?
No, they have to kneel on the floor and use their chair as the desk. So they have to kneel on kneeling pads, work at their chair, or they have to. Well, this other school, they had to bring in big, like multi-gallon like storage tubs. You know, those clear plastic ones that are flat on top, with that will hold their lunch and their books and their whatever else they do, because they're getting rid of lockers, right? So they will use that as their desk as they kneel.
Yeah, no, this is your children are being taught how to be Guantanamo Bay prisoners.
Right.
That's what that's about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't you just go ahead and throw a gag on them?
Right.
Like all the time.
Speaking of prisoners, our latest video, it's a multi-part piece. We put out part 1. It's called 13 Amended. It's about the 13th Amendment and the great, reset and the Fourth Industrial Revolution all combined into one. Great, taco of pain. So part 1, I know, the taco of pain.
So we're gonna go ahead and leave it there.
Yeah.
Please become a patron,
right.
So you can see our work, because we're not putting anything publicly on YouTube until we make our goal. Go to our Patreon page and you can have access to all our work.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna go. Thank you for joining us today, and we will see you in a couple of weeks.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Book of Hours are artists here to empower and embolden your response to the constant negative sound bites that attack your news and social media feeds. In order to continue making the video essays and art you've come to enjoy, we need your support. Make a one-time donation or become a patron. Thank you.